Well, hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of the New Construction Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Anya Christianten, and I'm really excited to introduce my guest for today. His name is Brian Barrett, and Brian is the owner of Automated Digital. And I'm so excited to have you on today's show, Brian. Welcome.
Well, thank you for having me, Anya.
Thank you. So, Brian, we usually like to kick things off by giving our listeners a little bit of an introduction of who you are, what you do now, and what your journey has been.
Great. Yeah. So I came out of school as an accountant, worked in corporate accounting for a while, transitioned into finance and business analysis. So that foundation's really given me a good background in understanding the numbers and really digging into analytics and such. And then I realized that looking at spreadsheets wasn't super awesome. So I got into the marketing world and landed at a home builder, Shea Homes, for a number of years, and kind of got going early on the digital marketing stuff, on the marketing stuff. I actually personally set up their first Facebook page, which is kind of funny because I'm not like a super social guy. So that really got me into the marketing side of home building. And then during the recession, the marketing team got downsized, and I went off and started a consulting agency and a performance marketing agency. And since then, just over the years, we've built some technology to help automate some processes. And now we have Automated Digital.
Great. And if you guys know that I am a big fan of automating stuff. So if it's, especially when it comes to follow up and those redundant things that you usually do that doesn't get done unless it's automated, I'm all for it. So we have a little bit of a background in common. I don't know if I told you that I am actually a certified investment management analyst. Back in my previous career, I was selling ETFs and stuff like that to financial advisors. So I have a background in finance too. So I can understand why you decided to leave that field.
It was a good move.
Yes, not the most exciting, especially when you're on the data side and analytics and all that stuff. It's not as exciting as analytics for home builders, for sure. All right, cool. So, the reason why I wanted to have Brian on today's podcast is because we were talking about kind of what you've been up to lately. And one of the things that you recently created is called Virtually There. And essentially, it's a tool that helps you. What I would describe it as is it's a tool that really helps you sell better online. Now, as most of you know, we have gone virtual, I should say, when it comes to selling. In the last year, really, that's been a big shift with pandemic and everything. And I think looking ahead, it's certainly something that is not likely to change in the near future. I think consumers are comfortable with that. I mean, also for the builders, they're realizing the many benefits of virtual selling, including, hey, it takes so much less time and you can actually dedicate specific time to a specific family instead of running around like a chicken with your head cut off on the weekend with trying to juggle 15 different families in your model home, and in the end you're not really doing anybody a good service. But with that being said, I think we've done a great job for the most part adapting to the new virtual selling environment, where, when it first happened, we were like, whoa, what do I do? What's Zoom? And now everyone is super comfortable using Zoom. And I think most of us are also much more comfortable being on camera and interacting with our prospects on camera. But I think it is definitely a thing that it it is more challenging to sell online than it is to sell in person. And the challenge comes in from the fact that it's a little bit more challenging to build relationships online, and also to the fact that it can be awkward sometimes if you're not super comfortable with the technology. Like, what I mean by that is when you're looking at your floor plans, you're flipping between the communities, etc. It can be awkward when you're trying to find all of that information when the customer is asking you for it, and you're scrambling trying to get that over to them. So Brian really solved that problem with his new tool that's called Virtually There. So Brian, why don't you tell us a little bit more about that tool and what it does?
Great. Yeah, so just wanted to take you back for a second. Um, we've been responsible for looking at the analytics and optimizing digital performance for a lot of years with home builders. And one of the things we've always been preaching is it's very easy to see before the pandemic that take an average website session, customers usually stay on the website for 3 minutes or so. We also noticed that when customers engage with anything virtual, be it a Matterport or some other form of virtual tour, the average session duration is about 15 minutes. So for years, we've been preaching, let's pull that content forward because that's what customers are engaging with. Now, since the pandemic, obviously the need for virtual tours and such has accelerated. So it seems like most builders, as you mentioned, are comfortable now using for virtual conferencing solutions, and also really building out virtual tours for more or less all of their communities and models. So now that we've reached parity there, we are looking just philosophically, we're always about converting more leads to prospects and sales faster for the lowest cost. So typically that lends itself well to doing email marketing and follow-up and drip campaigns and all this and that, and connecting the data with CRM, so salespeople can follow up. But now with the advent of more online sales counselors, we saw an opportunity, since we're also very accustomed to building user experience on websites, we saw an opportunity to help online sales counselors particularly speed up and make the online sales process using a virtual interaction much more efficient. For example, Virtually There, it's a web app that sits and works within Zoom, Microsoft Teams, any of the large video conferencing platforms. So it's agnostic and irrespective of whatever the builder IT wants to use. It's very easy for an online sales counselor to launch with a click of a button. So when a potential buyer gets into a virtual meeting with an online sales counselor, the online sales counselor launches the application and then has the ability to quickly navigate around all the available content for any community plan or spec. Typically, when an online sales counselor is trying to demonstrate a particular community plan or spec, that online sales counselor has to poke around the website or look at hard materials on their desk to find out and tell the potential customer what information is available, be it square foot, price, availability of a lot, etc. So within the Virtually There application, we've created an admin panel for the online sales counselor to use, which quickly helps them quickly navigate in one single view to all the different products that a builder has across their entire portfolio. So instead of poking around the website and navigating the website, they have it all readily accessible. The second thing is when demonstrating a particular product, customers usually like to see multiple things. So if the customer's wanting to see a particular kitchen of plan A, that online salesperson can show them that kitchen. They can show them that kitchen today. But what happens when the customer wants to see plan B kitchen? So typically the online sales counselor needs to navigate around the website and find it. From our admin panel, very quickly, all that content's available. So the online sales counselor can quickly show the customer side by side. So
Yeah,
that's
and
the
sorry to interrupt you, but what I really liked about it was that ability to kind of compare, one versus the other. And, really, unless you're, opening multiple tabs, navigating to that community, navigating to that floor plan. And I think it's really the system, when you were describing it to me, I was kind of like, well, what's the big deal? Like it's, you just navigate. But when you actually see the system and how easy it is to actually get all of your information at the fingertips, it really makes a lot more sense, I think. And yeah, I really like that ability. Like, say, if you're talking to a customer about two floor plans that are similar to each other, how you can very easily flip between one to the other, and it's such a seamless process for the customer. I think one of the biggest things for customers is that when you become flustered as a salesperson, and technology can definitely add that layer, right? They're not in front of you, you're not standing looking at the floor plan side by side, building that rapport, which hopefully you are building that rapport on online. But it can be more challenging to try to find this data, try to find that. And if you don't know the website like the back of your hand, which you should, but still takes time to get to it, it can create really awkward pauses and unnecessary situations where the consumer just becomes uncomfortable. And if they are having an uncomfortable or unpleasant experience, then they're not likely to do it again. So you definitely want to make sure that um, when you're meeting with them virtually, that it doesn't take away from the sales process. If anything, it should virtual ability should actually enhance that process. And I think that tool essentially is doing that. It's enhancing that process, because now you do have everything available at your fingertips. It really eliminates that layer of, oh wait, let me poke around, and while I'm doing that, I'm gonna whistle some weird song and try to make some weird conversation with you as I'm doing that. So it really makes sales process much smoother, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's a great explanation for the customer experience. To that point, when we were getting some beta testing going for this particular platform, we timed how long it would take for an online sales counselor to demonstrate 4 different plans within a community, and the floor plans particularly. And when using the Virtually There platform, the salesperson can deliver the same information 90% faster. So to your point about that customer experience, not that the salesperson needs to rush through it, but as far as accessing the information, it's 90% faster, which, as you mentioned, is significantly less frustrating and allows for that relationship to be built, started on a good foot.
For
Uh,
sure.
what, and just wanted to note one thing. Not only is it easier to access the information, but not all content is always available. For example, Plan A might have a virtual tour, Plan B might not. So if the customer wants to see Plan A, you're able to demonstrate that virtual tour. And then if the customer says, hey, let me see Plan B, and the online sales counselor is like, sure, let me show it to you. And then they go to the Plan B and no content exists. And that's really awkward and frustrating too. So not only is the content readily available to access, our application also is able to show what is and what isn't available. So there's no awkward experiences where the customer salesperson can't see it.
Yes, that's huge, because it's again, it's part of kind of like setting expectations. And when you say, "Oh, sure, yeah, I can show it to you," and then, "Oh no, I can't," it again takes away from that. Now, I know that you speak primarily to online sales counselors as as the kind of a ideal audience for this tool, but I also think that it's actually very much applicable to just a regular new home salesperson sitting in a model home, because so many of us are still selling virtually, or if we're not selling 100% virtually, then a lot of our appointments are done virtually. So whether it's the first time I'm meeting somebody, and instead of them coming into my model home, maybe I can hop on a quick Zoom meeting and answer any questions to make sure that that's actually a good fit before we move on to the next stage and actually see the model home in person. So I really think that that applies across the board, whether you're an online sales counselor or a salesperson sitting in a model home, that tool can still be utilized. And one of my favorite things about it is, I think, the feature that allows you to send information to customer after the call. And if you can talk a little bit more about that, because I think that that is really important. It kind of brings it full circle.
Yeah, we call it the overview. And a couple of the features that feed the overview, first and foremost, within the admin panel, when a meeting starts, the online sales counselor can capture customer information, first name, last name, time frame to move, preferences on size and price and such. And typically that information is caught, whether it's in a different application, whether it's a CRM written down on a piece of paper or whatever. But we find it really important to have that information being able to be captured from within the app. It just makes it easier and more likelihood that that data is captured. So when you capture that customer information, you have a rich customer record. And then during the meeting, our application is tracking everything that the customer is engaging with. So be it community A and community B, they liked a spec, they liked whatever plan. So at the conclusion of the virtual conference, we have a summary page where the sales rep and the customer can go through. They can like and dislike anything they looked at. We append that customer information that we captured to that overview. We package all that information up into what I consider a more complete customer record, not only first name, last name, but also all the product information they're interested in. And then we push that data to whatever CRM or other platform a builder's interested in. So one other interesting thing about that, you mentioned actual sales people, not just online sales counselors using this tool. It's typically in that process, if a salesperson's engaging with a customer, they'll batch up and links or paperwork or whatever and email it off to a customer. In this particular case, all of that information, floor plans, virtual tours, everything is found on a private hyperlink that can easily be sent and batched to a customer. So there's no attachment needed. The links are automatically generated, and it makes that follow-up real time.
Yes, I love that. So now you actually have something to follow up with. It's not just, hey, here's, a bunch of different things. Here's an actual hyperlink that, again, pops up and opens up the virtual tour that you really like. So then it's so much easier for the customer to share that with their spouse or whoever else may be the decision maker. So I definitely love that for follow up. You always want to have a great reason for your follow up, and that gives you that great reason to do that. Now, Brian, I'm curious. Since you rolled out this tool, do you have any data from your builders on what difference it makes? Like, I would bet that the time that it takes a customer from the time you first have that meeting to the time that they sign the agreement of sale, I bet some using this tool would actually decrease that time just because of the efficiency. Do you have any data on that yet?
Yeah, that's a great question. The end-to-end reporting, it's purely dependent on the builder systems, and we haven't been able to integrate all the way through the use of our tool all the way through a sale. Certainly the data that's captured can be used for that, but that's dependent on the home builder. What we do see is that from that first interaction of a virtual tour, there's significantly higher conversion rate to the next step. So whether the next step is reserving a home, scheduling an in-person visit, or scheduling an after-hours visit, because we have those call to actions or functionality from within the application, that next step happens at a much higher conversion rate and faster.
Great. So is the next step built into that hyperlink follow-up, or how does that work?
It's built in to the virtual conference itself.
Mm-hmm.
So that when an online sales counselor or sales representative is going through that process, they're queued within the application to ask what the next steps are. And depending on what the builder has available as the next steps, those options are available. And from within the app, if you want to schedule a follow-up appointment, click schedule follow-up an appointment, get the customer information, integrate it with the calendar system, and off you go. So that's really it happens before the email goes out. And the email has next steps as well, like any normal email or landing page would have, but the real value is doing it within the session.
That is so genius. I love that. So one of my favorite quotes is that you don't get what you deserve in life, you get what you ask for. I'm a big believer in that. And I think with salespeople,
Yeah.
you'd be shocked how many salespeople don't ask for the sale, or they don't ask for that next step, whatever that may be.
Mhm.
So I love the idea of having it built into the system so that it's almost like it's part of your, 2 step process. And so step one, get the customer information right there, so you have their first, last name, email address, if for some reason they were able to schedule this call, without that. But then the next step is, okay, what are we doing next? It's like a check mark, checking it off. So just having that built in, I bet that conversion goes through the roof, because again, you would be shocked by how many people don't ask for that next step, and it's so simple.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a great point. That's one of the reasons we put it in. And like I mentioned before, we're conversion rate oriented, performance marketing oriented. So, conversion rate's the biggest thing we look at. So we try to build in improved conversion rate into the application.
For sure, I can see your analytical mind spinning, working. So yeah, that's for sure a great solution. So if somebody wanted to learn more about it, what's the best way to connect with you, Brian, and how can we find out more?
There's two ways. First is going to our website, automatd.digital. And then the other way, which I get most of my communication from, is LinkedIn. It's LinkedIn Brian.Barrett.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Brian, for being on today. I really appreciate you sharing this new tool with us. Again, when I first heard about it, I kind of was a little skeptical, like, oh, like how is it different from looking on a website? But I think when you really see it in action, it's almost like you have a control panel, like close to like a video game, where like everything is at your fingertips, and it's super easy to switch between the plans. It's super easy to filter by different communities, or if you're in the same communities, like how many floor plans do you have that meet that certain criteria. I think that's what really makes it great, is that it does cut back so much on that time spent searching and looking, and it makes you look like a true expert, because you're able to come up with that information super fast. And I can see how for OSCs it is particularly important, because they are covering so many different communities, and obviously, their job is to know a little bit about each community, but they're not going to know every single thing about every single community. And this tool really allows them to act as an expert on almost every community, because customers expect us to know our stuff. And if you can answer those questions and figure out really quickly if it's a good fit or not a good fit, then the leads that you're going to be sending to the salesperson are going to be that much better. So I love that. Any parting words, any advice for our audience before we wrap this up?
I think you said it way better than I could. So I appreciate you recognizing the value and putting the pieces together. So appreciate the opportunity to be able to get to share virtually there with you.
Awesome. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being on, Brian, and I will talk to you very soon.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.